put Netanyahu's government in direct...
He's one of the good ones. He's Arab, but he's one of the good ones. Trust me. Trust me.
Iran is a conflict that's been building for decades and is now...
No, that's not a good argument. They should build a weapon for self-preservation ASAP. They should have built it yesterday. They should have built it in 2004. The very fact that they haven't is the reason why they're getting fucking pummeled right now. They should have built the nukes when Benjamin Netanyahu first said Iran is moments away from building nukes in 1993. If I were to entertain that religious fundamentalism plays a role in the governance, in the affairs of the Ayatollahs, I would say, number one, it creates tremendous resentment. It breeds tremendous resentment and becomes a national security concern for Iran, as we have seen, like the religious fundamentalism. And two, potentially the fatwa for proliferation, like weapons-grade proliferation, is a major now. Stop! What are you doing? What do you mean? Oh, we got a religious dicta that we must follow, that we can't make nukes. Get the fuck out of here. What? If Iran had a nuke, would they have used it by now? No, dude. Nukes are not for using. It's for keeping safe, okay? That's it. You're supposed to look at them and every now and then show and remind people that you have them. That's it. It is a deterrence. Hey, don't like what Israel's doing to your country right now? Well, there's one easy way to stop that from happening. It's called developing and enriching uranium and developing a warhead. Not one, maybe like 50. Clearly, ballistic missiles are not enough of a deterrence for Israel. Yeah, one simple trick. One simple trick Israeli politicians don't want you to know. You develop nukes and they can't you over. Yeah, it is haram to produce such weapons. You are only allowed to produce protection. Good job, man. Like I said, the number one L for religious fundamentalism for Iran is the instability caused out of the repression that is literally a matter of national security. Like if Iran was a more secular country, if the Islamic Republic was more secular, ironically enough, regardless of the name, and they were way, way, way more hands off with its population, they literally would be an incredibly stable country in spite of the sanctions. They would be more stable in spite of the sanctions. This isn't like a dumbass perspective as far as like, oh, women should be able to wear bikinis. Like, that's not what I'm talking about. Don't be stupid. The second part of this would be if they also had nukes, they would literally be a more stable country and would be secure.
Now spiraling out of control. The Israelis began this phase with a huge wave of strikes on June the 13th that have continued for days, dealing damaging blows to Iran's weapons program and taking out key scientific and military personnel.
Like, they just keep repeating it. They just keep repeating like, oh, they're doing damaging blows to the Iranian weapons program. Make a nuke!
Iran's response has been to fire missile and drone barrages, while some Israeli leaders speak openly of regime change in Tehran.
So are you going to target the supreme leader?
We're doing what we need to do.
The threat of war between Israel and Iran has hung over the Middle East for more than 40 years. And we look at some of the key events and alliances that have shaped this proxy war and brought it out of the shadows.
The new Jewish state is born.
Iran and Israel's relationship used to be very different. After the creation of Israel in 1948, Iran was the second Muslim-majority nation to recognize the newly formed state. The two countries had diplomatic relations. Israel imported Iranian oil, and there were daily flights connecting Tel Aviv and Tehran, with a substantial Jewish community living in Iran. But then came the Iranian Revolution of 1979. Iran's former leader, the Shah, who was seen as a puppet of the US and the UK, was overthrown in a violent coup. In his place,
Israel started off in 1948. There's a couple things that you skipped in between, you know? Kind of interesting. Kind of interesting how you skipped that. Possibly because you're British and played a formative role. Your government played a formative role in the Shah's implementation.
Ayatollah Khomeini took power, and from the very beginning of his rule, the new religious republic described Israel as an enemy of Islam. The little Satan to its powerful ally America, the great Satan.
Yeah, I wonder why. I wonder why they were saying that. Well, perhaps there is no reason. Perhaps if you package the events that unfolded up until the Iranian Revolution, yeah, it doesn't seem appropriate for them to feel this way, right? Like you said that they were claiming that the Shah was a puppet of America and Great Britain. How interesting. Of course, the recognition of Iranian resentment, justifiable resentment towards Western intervention that led to the Iranian Revolution, that created the power structure that currently still exists, that is ultimately a repressive force, but one that had in its initial phases roots within popular mobilization, so popular that they were able to thwart the goddamn Shah. In order to understand where this resentment comes from, you would have to take recognition over Western intervention in the region. This is important to understand. The reason why this is important to understand is because if you don't understand this, you will never understand the Iranian public sentiment overall, or why they might be a little bit more skeptical of Western intervention beyond what you hear from the Pahlavi dick riders that you hear in your communities that go, oh, I am Persian. I want glass Iran. One day I want to go back and eat kubide. Yeah, you will never understand the actual attitude and the anger and frustration that people feel both with the Islamic Republic, but then also simultaneously an insurmountable amount of anger and resentment towards the West for blowing them up, okay? Western interference in Iranian affairs is quite literally the reason why the Islamic Revolution happened, okay? The Islamic Republic was able to succeed. It is idiotic to make no note of that whatsoever.
Iran embraced the Palestinian cause, handing the hastily abandoned and ransacked Israeli embassy in Tehran over to the Palestinian Liberation Organization under Yasser Arafat. Iran, under its new leaders, called on all of the Muslim world to unite against Israel. But despite becoming enemies, the two countries have chosen to work together in the past when it strengthens their cause. In a marriage of convenience, Israel provided military equipment to Iran to support its long war against Saddam Hussein's Iraqi forces in the 1980s. Iran was desperate for weapons, specifically more advanced weapons from the US that Israel could provide. And for Israel, the calculation was that, while Iran's rhetoric was alarming, it was Iraq and Saddam Hussein that posed the more immediate threat. The war between Iraq and Iran eventually ended in a stalemate in 1988, and it had a profound effect on Tehran's thinking. Firstly, the need for powerful weapons, missiles, and power. Iraq's use of ballistic missiles on Iranian cities made Tehran develop their own. And while Ayatollah Khomeini had initially declared weapons un-Islamic, his replacement, Ali Khamenei, told the country's scientists, regarding atomic energy, we need it now, to let our enemies know that we can defend ourselves. That effectively marked the start of the Islamic Republic's ambitions, with the aim of joining the only other power in the Middle East, Israel.
Yeah, I wonder why. We gave gun to both sides? Yeah, of course we gave gun to both sides. We always give gun to both sides. Think about, okay, imagine a conflict in the Middle East or in in Asia, okay? Like think about Afghanistan. We give gun, then we fight guy with gun after the guy with gun fights for an adversary.
Israel itself does not publicly acknowledge it has weapons, but it's believed to have been developing an arsenal since the 1960s. And secondly, the war in Iraq exposed how isolated Iran was in the region, with Syria its only real ally in the Middle East. The end of the conflict now allowed Iran to focus on building not just the state, but also its alliances with anti-Israel forces in the region. As far back as 1982, even as the country was...
I think the biggest L in the aftermath of the Iranian Revolution was the undermining, death, destruction, and suppression of leftist forces that also obviously mobilized in what could be considered like a proletarian revolution. If they had more diversity in their ranks, Iran, I think, would be a genuinely different country right now. Leftist L's? Wait, what? That's not an L. What do you mean? They're not. How are they supposed to? You think they would be on board with their own demise? No. Obviously, allowing any sort of leftist dissent, allowing any sort of communism to exist in the aftermath of the Iranian Revolution would be not so beneficial for Western interests as well. Do with that information what you will. I'm not saying anything. I'm not pointing any fingers. But obviously, that British Petroleum, the British government, along with the United States government, in the initial intervention, was seen as a necessity due to like a little bit of leaning towards social democracy from the Iranian population, an act of sovereignty, a demonstration of autonomy, a democratic demonstration of autonomy. Okay, considering that was a major problem for them. Iran has always historically been this massive country, this massive power player that terrified the West, because God forbid they would become a Cold War ally. There was never any proof that Mossadegh was in any way, shape, or form involved with the USSR at all. He was a moderate. He was a nationalist and a moderate. But that was enough. That was enough because it harmed the potential future interests of British Petroleum. It was named something different at the time. I forget what it was called. But that was a major reason. I think most of the killing came when Saddam invaded, even though they were mass imprisoned before they used the MEK siding with Saddam to wipe them out. Yeah, socialists got a fuck reputation when MEK sided with Saddam during the existential war that all hopes were a socialist Iran. Anglo-Iranian Oil Company. It was the Anglo-Iranian Oil Company. New polling. The vast majority of voters say Iran posed a major or minor threat both to Israel and the U.S. Yeah, of course they feel this way. Americans are stupid as... Pressed on whether the threat of an Iranian nuclear weapon justifies U.S. involvement, most say yes, but there are major divides by generation, with young voters saying not to get involved. While Harris voters overwhelmingly want the U.S. to stay out of the conflict, Trump's own voters are split about what the right role for the United States is. I mean, this is after, a tremendous amount of conditioning and Islamophobia post-war on terror, a ginormous failure, a spectacular failure, but also a faucet of propaganda from every outlet for the past week, talking about how America must go to war. We have to go to war. Nothing to do here. Also paired up with something that I always say, the American median voter's mind is an enigma, okay? A mystery trapped within a riddle. It is impossible to decipher what an American truly feels, because in most circumstances, it is a sea of contradictions directly at odds with one another. The same American will tell you in the same breath that they need to stop Iran's nuclear program from striking Washington, D.C., and then simultaneously tell you American intervention is unacceptable because who wants to defend Israel? We are an endlessly malleable population that is chock full of resentment and anger and are inherently very hostile to everything that we don't understand. And we understand very little. Remember that. Let's continue with the history.
Receiving weapons from Israel, Iran helped the formation of Hezbollah, a militant Islamic group fighting Israel in Lebanon. Iran also backed Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad in Gaza, which were formed in the 1980s, and they also supported the Houthis in Yemen, who emerged in the early 1990s. Iran supported the Assad regime in Syria throughout his reign, and following Saddam Hussein's removal from power in 2003, Iran has backed dozens of Shia militia in Iraq. Iran's extensive influence in the region and its ongoing nuclear program are central to Israel's existential fears. Which brings us to Israel's most crucial ally, America. Israel's security is completely tied to the United States, which has provided substantial military support and brokered diplomatic ties with regional players such as Egypt, Jordan, the UAE, Qatar, and Bahrain. And political leaders in both the US and Israel have long viewed Iran as a hostile and dangerous actor, with US-imposed sanctions on the Islamic Republic a near permanent feature since 1979. This was Israel's new young Prime Minister speaking to the US Congress about the Iranian threat back in 1996.
If Iran were to acquire nuclear weapons, this could presage catastrophic consequences.
By the time Benjamin Netanyahu returned to power in 2009, Israel and the US were already collaborating to sabotage Iran's nuclear program. A sophisticated cyber attack that began in 2005 targeted the computers controlling Iran's uranium enrichment facilities, severely disrupting nuclear fuel production in 2010. Netanyahu also took more direct action. Israel carried out multiple assassinations of key nuclear scientists between 2010 and 2020, including the head of Iran's nuclear program, Mohsen Fakhrizadeh.
Mr. Prime Minister, welcome.
But while the US and Israel agreed that Iran posed a threat, there was a difference of opinion between President Obama and Netanyahu when it came to Iran's nuclear future. Netanyahu insisted that Tehran should not enrich any uranium, whereas Obama realized that in order to get a long-term diplomatic solution, there would need to be some concessions. Chilled in 2015.
This is literally the reason why every like pro-Israel person says Obama's the #1 Jew hater of all time because he dared defy Benjamin Netanyahu. The same people that say, oh, there's a lot of disagreements in Israel. Well, that and because he's a secret Muslim and also because he's black. I think that probably Israel is very racist. Israel does have a very racist society, not dissimilar to America in that regard. Well, no, they're doing the same fake poll psyop crap they did during the Ukraine debacle. Only 16% of Americans polled think the U.S. should get involved in Israel's war against Iran, while 60% oppose U.S. involvement. Yeah, I mean, I said this yesterday as well. There was another poll that came out. It could be, again, the three factors that I mentioned, but it could also mean like a bullshit consent manufacturing poll. Not that our consent matters. Those polls are only as important as you can point to them to say, you see, people are on board with this. We're just abiding by the democratic wishes of the public. And the most annoying war hawk that you know will turn around and point to those polls and be like, you're so stupid, Americans wanted this.
After the signing of the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, widely known as the Iran nuclear deal. This agreement, negotiated by Iran with the UN Security Council and backed by Obama, placed restrictions on Iran's nuclear program and allowed inspections in exchange for sanctions relief.
Because of this deal, the international community will be able to verify that the Islamic Republic of Iran will not develop a nuclear weapon.
Netanyahu vehemently opposed the deal because it
will not develop a...
Look at how mad the ultra-Zionist is in the background. It's like, I knew I shouldn't have been a part of this. It's like, one day I'll get my genocide. I want it. I want it, Jack. One day, I'm going to do the Finlandization of NATO. And I mean the NATOization of Finland. AUKUS.
Nuclear weapon.
Netanyahu vehemently opposed the deal because it still allowed Iran to enrich some uranium, calling it a mistake of his...
Do you think Biden called Obama a Jew hater behind closed doors? Yes. Yes, I do.
Historic proportions. The Iran nuclear deal...
Or he said something like, listen, Jack, I know he's Muslim, but he's not a Jew hater. He knows they're magic money people. That's what he said. That's what, in my head canon, that's what Biden said.
Put Netanyahu's government in direct...
He's one of the good ones. He's Arab, but he's one of the good ones. Trust me. Trust me.
Opposition with Washington over Iran. But
this is one of the worst deals ever made by any country.
Donald Trump's surprise victory in November 2016 was a boost to Netanyahu, with the new president inviting him to the White House in his first month in office. Then, during a trip to Israel, Trump made a clear break from Obama's approach to Iran, with the US president and Netanyahu now firmly aligned.
Together we can thwart Iran's unbridled ambition to become a nuclear weapon state.
In 2018, during a presentation involving a slide...
Dude, I was listening to the New York Times Daily on this. It's so funny because the New York Times Daily was doing like their classic coverage of like all the events that took place behind the scenes. And there was a point where when Bibi first came to America to visit Trump after Trump's election victory a couple months ago, they said he showed him a PowerPoint, and that's when I knew it was over. Okay, this man loves his stupid ass PowerPoints. He loves his stupid ass props, and Trump is exactly the kind of stupid that also responds to said PowerPoints. Okay, he probably showed him the Acme bomb and be like, yeah, you see, in 2012 I said it was 90% complete. Now, in 2025, 99% complete. Look at the bomb. Boom. It explodes. One of my funniest things that I read on that meeting was also that Trump was disturbed by the beeper that Netanyahu gave. Trump was disturbed by the beeper that Netanyahu gave him and may have read it as a threat.
Show in front of a backdrop of files and CDs, Netanyahu said that Iran had lied to the world about its nuclear intentions when signing the 2015 deal. And just a few days later, Donald Trump withdrew the US from the agreement.
This was a horrible, one-sided deal that should have never, ever been made.
Trump reimposed sanctions on Iran and assassinated their top general Qasem Soleimani in 2020 while he was visiting Iraq, as the US president began to pressure Iran in an effort to sign a new expanded agreement. But that deal has never materialized, and instead, critics say, the US withdrawal from the 2015 deal has seen increasing violations of its terms by Iran and an acceleration of the nuclear program. In early 2023, a confidential report by the International Atomic Energy Agency said it had detected uranium particles enriched to 83.7% at one of Iran's nuclear plants, very close to weapons grade. Then, that same year, events in Israel set the stage for a conflict with Iran that would erupt nearly 2 years later. The October the 7th attacks by Hamas were the deadliest on Israeli soil since the nation's founding.
I can't believe Iran will violate a deal that we tore to shreds, that it's still abided by, for the record. Here's one of the hidden parts of this that's even dumber. Iran continued abiding by the denuclearization agreement even after Trump ripped it apart. It was only after they still were collaborating with international authorities. They still had investigators come and look at the sites. And only after the Trump administration added additional sanctions on Iran, in spite of them following the agreement, did they go, all right, well, you then, which is yet another L, I think, for the Ayatollah, because that's probably when they should have been like, all right, this fatwa shit is, this fatwa stuff is crazy. I don't know. Oops, what am I hearing? Okay, I heard that actually we should make a nuke. God is now telling me to make a nuke. Nuclear proliferation and enrichment of uranium is the way, it seems.
Netanyahu's government immediately retaliated, waging a war in Gaza that Palestinian officials say has killed...
I was reading about the Pakistani scientist that went to Pakistan from, I think it was in England originally, and basically built a nuclear lab in the middle of a goddamn field, and was able to create nuclear for Pakistan, or no, Netherlands. Sorry, not from England, from the Netherlands. Yeah, the GOAT. Respect. Sometimes you gotta give the goats their respect that they deserve. Yeah, in a cave with a bunch of scraps, like Iron Man style. Low key. Baller, dude. Baller shot caller. Iran needs to draft a player like him. Dude, I don't think Iran's lack of nuclear proliferation is a matter of intelligence gap. I'm serious. Like, I'm not the most knowledgeable on how this stuff happens, but Iran is a very educated country. A very educated country where there are plenty of, Iranian engineers that work overseas, that work within Iran. I think they just don't want to do it. I suspect it's a foolish decision, but is America the Soviet Union why the nuclear race started? America is responsible. Yes. What do you mean? Did you forget? Virtual Meal is back, asking silly questions again. Did you forget what America did? What do you think Hiroshima and Nagasaki is famous for? Everyone who is a bit good goes abroad to live. IR made a shithole of a country, bro. What? No. You think that there aren't enough engineers? Come on.
More than 55,000 people. While the military threat from Hamas has all but been removed, Israel has weakened other Iranian...
There's also, I think, part of the reason why they're like, this conversation about nuclear proliferation is stupid. Like, they know how to enrich uranium. They have nuclear facilities. And these guys are using that as a pretext to just do regime change in Iran. Just make a nuke, man. Jesus Christ. Are you pro-Iran having nuclear weapons? I'm pro-Iran having sovereignty. And in this day and age, nuclear proliferation for countries that are not protected under the nuclear umbrella of the Western world, and even those countries don't have any sovereignty. They're servile. They're basically vassal states, Turkey included. But yes, if you are outside of the periphery, if you are outside of the protective banner of Western empire, you absolutely need nukes. Otherwise, you will become a proxy. Look at Ukraine. Even if you're Western aligned, you will become a proxy that will be used and abused.
Iranian allies, invading southern Lebanon and decimating Hezbollah's fighting force and killing its leader, Hasan Nasrallah. They carried out joint strikes with the US on Houthis in Yemen, and they also bombed the Iranian consulate in the Syrian capital of Damascus in April 2024, as well as assassinating Hamas's political leader Ismail Haniyeh while he was in the Iranian capital Tehran in July of the same year. When Syria's president Bashar al-Assad was overthrown in December 2024, Israel took the opportunity to destroy any remaining threats to Israel's air force within Syria, effectively creating a safe corridor for future strikes on Iran. And so, in
effectively creating a safe corridor for future strikes in Iran is such a funny way to be like, yeah, once this country's regime was toppled, we decided to destroy any capabilities it has that it could potentially use to defend itself at any moment's notice. Like, what a wild way to frame that is. I thought this was like I thought Syria now could be a democratic country, a peaceful country that can have sovereignty and exist. It's like, nope, it can't actually. It has to be a holdover state once again, but this time for us and America's interest in the region. Great stuff.
Just 14 months, Iran's network of proxy military support was...
Remember when so many ball knowers, the light NATO Andes were yelling at me when I said that Zelensky was going to be basically Zelensky, and everyone was like, dude, shut the up. You love Bashar al-Assad. You love Assad, bro. You're Assad defender, dude. Like, why don't you want this reformed Al-Qaeda militant, reformed Al-Qaeda commander to run Syria, dude? Shut the up, dude. It's not going to be defending Israel's interests, dude. Shut the up. What happened, dude? What happened, Mr. I love institutions? What happened? He's going to come out being like, Mr. President, look at me. I shave my beard, Mr. President. I will be the Republican Zelensky, Mr. President. Look, I play basketball, Mr. President. I love institutions. Zelensky was Kamala Harris's Zelensky, or Biden's Zelensky. It took less than 2 months for you to be right about that? Yeah, dude, anyone who could see what was taking place in Syria could recognize what was going on. And the reason why I was saying that wasn't even because of the former Al-Qaeda commander becoming the head of the state and you know, Zelenskifying himself. The reason why I said that is because Turkey was most responsible for the toppling of the Assad regime. And Turkey is a NATO power player. Turkey's brigades were the ones that toppled the Assad regime. That was done at the behest of American influence in the region, American intervention, American interest in the region.
All but gone. So the attacks on Iran come at a time when Tehran has few allies to turn to. Israel's targeting and killing of key Iranian military personnel and nuclear experts, a seemingly non-existent Iranian air defense, and Israel's own ability to defend against most retaliatory strikes has given Netanyahu a clear upper hand. But the war again highlights his nation's reliance on the United States.
I used to work in nuclear. If you have already enrichment centrifuges ready and working, it's super easy to make a traditional fission nuke. Iran deliberately doesn't want to make one because the Ayatollah issued a fatwa saying having a nuke is haram. It is the fusion nuke / hydrogen bombs that are a bit harder to make. Read this, important.
While Israel could not have carried out its attacks on June the 13th without the Americans being made aware of their plans, the US has resisted direct involvement in the conflict so far.
I may do it, I may not do it. I mean,
okay, but isn't the fear justified when Iran said they would wipe Israel off the map by 2040? Obviously, bombing Iran was unacceptable. I just want to understand the motivations at play besides maintaining power in the region. Iran does, first of all, Israel has nukes. You think Iran doesn't know that Israel has nukes? No, Why does Saudi Arabia want nuclear proliferation? Why does Saudi Arabia want nukes? Okay? No one that has nukes is using it. It's not a matter of the ICBM delivery capabilities that stops North Korea from using nukes right now. Like, that's just the meta. People will be like, oh no, North Korea can't use its nukes, even though it has nukes already, because it just doesn't have the delivery mechanism to be able to use it at some point. No, it's because once you get into the nuke club, they can't with you. You can actually be a sovereign state. Israel can't just fly over your air defenses and kill kill 200 people overnight because they felt like it. Oh my God, Hasan, your latest Bernie vid was on MSNBC. My Bernie vid. MSNBC was featured to interview with Bernie and AOC for what reason? Oh, Ari Melber did? Okay, good. I was worried at first. I thought they were gonna be like, this dangerous anti-Semite is talking to AOC and Bernie Sanders, but if it's Ari Melber, then it's probably good. Ari is fairly progressive. Talking about new media. Nice.
Nobody knows what I'm going to do.
Trump has demanded unconditional surrender, but he's no fan of conflict, having spent the past decade in politics promising not to get America involved in any more wars. What the US president decides to do next is the central question in this conflict. Destroying Iran's nuclear program is not possible without the use of heavy bunker-busting ordnance, which only the United States possesses. Or if the US and Israel are aiming for Iran's full surrender, or even regime change, then Ali Khamenei shows little sign of offering that. For more than 40 years, the potential for war between Israel and Iran has cast a shadow over global politics. The attacks since June the 13th have changed everything and brought this fight out into the open. And now to discuss more about Iran and Israel's long and fraught relationship, I'm joined by Sir Lawrence Freedman, Emeritus Professor of War Studies at King's College, London. So, Professor Freedman, was this conflict inevitable?
I'll explain it simply. Mutually assured destruction means that nuclear proliferation implies sovereignty. The sole purpose of having a nuke is to never use said nuke. Okay? Because if you use your nuke, then other countries will nuke you. And the reason why you need a nuke is so that other countries can't nuke you. Therefore, no country that has nukes are going to use said nukes, because using said nukes would imply you get nuked. And the reason why you want nukes is so you don't get nuked.
At all, ever since 1979. When
Zach Rar, what do you think will happen in the end? Will the regime last? I love this chatter. One, accidentally writing this in my chat instead of Asmongold's chat. But I also love the idea of a full-grown adult asking Asmongold this question. Like, he knows more than you do. It was not accidental. He tagged you. Putin's message to Iran, you're on your own. Reuters asked if Russia was ready to provide Iran with modern weapons to defend itself against Israeli strikes. Russian President Vladimir Putin said a strategic partnership treaty signed with Tehran in January did not envisage military cooperation. It's the same chatter that did this yesterday. It does boggle the mind that there are people who do ask that question sincerely to someone like Asmongold, as though he knows anything. Period. Not even just like anything about the history of Iran, history of Israel, but just anything in general. Do you think if Russia or China said off, this would stop? Not if Russia said off, it would stop. And not even if they say off. China has so many tools in its tool belt to apply pressure beyond writing a sternly worded letter against Israel every now and then. They could just stop trade with Israel, for example. That would be a tremendous amount of pressure. They could give weapons to Iran. They could give defensive capabilities to Iran. There is a lot that China could do, but the only thing they do is just go, we're very disappointed. We're very disappointed with our trade partner Israel that we will not stop trading with. Very, very disappointed, sir. How dare you?
When we saw the modern relations between effectively end.
Nothing is inevitable. There's always choices, and a number of choices.
China does give weapons to Iran. No, more weapons. More. Aircraft, anti-missile defense systems. More. By the way, this is a major flex moment for a lot of Turks. For the record, shouts out to my Turks in the chat that are having a victory lap currently talking about the S-400s because they were right. I mean, they were super right. Turks all over my timeline, up and down, were like, whoa, everyone that talks shit about getting Russian anti-aircraft and anti-missile systems are eating crow. And they're right. They're so fucking right. S-400'lar paketten çıkmadı kardom henüz. Çıkarsınlar çabuk. F-35 alamadık, S-400 aldık diye. Siktir et oğlum, F-35'i ne yapacaksın? Götüne... Doğru. The immediate response from the Turks was, they didn't even fucking take it out of the box yet. And then another Turk said, bread is now 50 lira. Fuck the S-400s. S-400'ü Amerikalılardan korktukları için kullanamıyoruz. Hayır, korktukları için değil Amerika'dan. Erdoğan Amerika'nın köpeği olduğu için kullanmıyor. Yiyecek yemeği yok, S-400 diyor amına kodum. Arkadaki kutulu oyuncaklar tarzı. Onları çıkaramam oğlum kutusundan. Pislenir sonra. Fiyatı yükseliyor oturduğu zaman kutuda. S-400'lerin de fiyatı yükseliyor oturduğu zaman kutuda. Belki satıp ekmek alırlar sizin için abi. Alright, let's keep going. Tozlanmasın.
Have been made, and at some points the possibilities not of reconciliation but of some sort of peaceful coexistence were there. But
I'm just saying, someone said the S-400s are in the box, like your toys behind you. And I said, yeah, they're keeping it in the box in mint condition so that it increases in value. And maybe one day they'll sell the S-400s so they can buy bread for the Turkish population.
Relations have
İktidarı neden seviyorsun? Saçmalama lan, iktidarı sever miyim? Manyak mısın?
been fraught. Not wholly immediately afterwards, but certainly...
Oğlum Türksün ama Türkçe anlamıyorsun amına koyayım. Biraz önce dedim ki Erdoğan Amerika'nın köpeği, ondan kullanmaz hiçbir zaman S-400'ü. Bana dönmüş diyor ki iktidarı neden seviyorsun diyor. Al işte. Nasıl ki İngilizce konuştuğum zaman Amerika'nın hayvanları anlamıyorsa dediğimi, Türk hayvanları da anlamıyor Türkçe konuştuğum zaman. Daha ne diyeyim lan?
Once Israel invaded Lebanon in 1982 and the rise of Hezbollah, this possibility has always been there.
And when we talk about the history of these two nations, you know, there seem to have been these big events, the aftermath of the Iran-Iraq war, the end of the Iran nuclear deal in 2015, and then October the 7th, those key moments. Are any of those particularly pivotal, do you think, in terms of where we are right now?
Well, they're all, I mean, they're a sequence and one leads to the other. So there was a deal in 2015. In fact, in principle, it's still in existence, but the United States walked away from it. Iran responded almost inevitably by enriching more uranium, and the Obama administration had sold this as something that could at least keep the cap on until about now. That moment was coming to an end anyway. So this year was always going to be pretty crucial. I think really what made the difference and what made these sort of attacks possible was the events after 7th of October and the dismantling of the military capacity, first of Hamas and then of Hezbollah, and then the downfall of Syria. And that creates a situation in which Iran is left looking pretty weak, unable to help its proxies when they're being...
Turks in the chat, the Americans are asking if I have an American accent when speaking Turkish. Do I have an American accent when speaking Turkish? All right, I'm going to skip this part. Breaking. President Donald